Gordon Chang joins us now on the phone. He's the author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Gordon, explain to us why this new technology, what exactly it means for North Korea growing as a nuclear power.
This is important because it comes on the heels of the tests of intercontinental ballistic missiles July 4th and July 28th. North Korea is putting together all of the capabilities necessary to nuke the United States, or anywhere else for that matter. They've got long-range ballistic missiles. They've got perhaps the ability to miniaturize them, which I think is actually correct. They are a little bit off on their guidance systems, and they have made much progress on their heat shielding. That's about all that they really need.
But what makes you so confident, Gordon, that you agree with this assessment?
Well, the North Koreans have miniaturized the nuke for their intermediate-range No-Dong missile. Now, miniaturizing a weapon for a long-range missile is more difficult, but they basically have most of the technology. Also, they appear to be getting help from the outside. They're not doing this on their own, which is one of the reasons why they are making much faster progress than the intelligence community had assessed before. So therefore, it makes sense that this report is correct. Now, of course, North Korea is opaque. There's a lot we don't know. But this fits in with facts that we already have.
Gordon, you mentioned getting help from the outside. From who?
Well, clearly the North Koreans have been getting help from the Chinese. So, for instance, the transporter erectors that brought the missiles to the launch sites on July 4th and July 28th are from China. Also, it appears that North Korea's most advanced missiles, more advanced than the ones that they launched last month, appear to be variants of China's JL-1 submarine launch missile. We don't know that for a fact, but nonetheless, the missiles look incredibly alike. And indeed, the United States, I think in public, needs to ask the Chinese, how come the North Koreans have Chinese or Chinese-looking missiles in their inventory?
Recently, we were hearing from the Trump administration that they were putting pressure on the Chinese to try to help in this situation. This would seem to be the exact opposite of that.
Yes, I think that the Chinese have been weaponizing the North Koreans, and that, of course, is inconsistent with the assumptions not only of this administration, but of prior ones that China really wants to help. I think that there's much too much evidence of collusion, not only with ballistic missiles, but also with nuclear weapons, to indicate that the Chinese are really on our side. And indeed, China has been busting the 6 previous sets of sanctions, and that is not consistent with a country that wants to help the United States and the international community.
Is this triggering an arms race, Gordon? You've got South Korea and Japan, neighbors right there. I can't imagine they're sitting quietly.
No, and matter of fact, after the last ballistic missile launch on July 28th, within hours, the South Koreans asked the United States to renegotiate the 1979 agreement that we have that restricts the types of ballistic missiles that South Korea can field. Now, of course, Japan has been rearming, but that's basically in response to Chinese provocations. But indeed, in North Asia, there is an arms race, or there are various arms races, and indeed, it looks like a very dangerous situation from any number of different perspectives.
Gordon, there seems to be also some uncertainty as to the number of nuclear weapons that North Korea may have right now. Is there a danger in not just underestimating their capabilities, but also overestimating it?
Yes, there's always a danger in overestimating, but that has not been the problem over the course of decades. Over the course of decades, the intelligence community in the United States and elsewhere has underestimated North Korea's capabilities. I actually don't think that they have 60 nukes in their arsenal, because I don't see why they would have actually developed weapons when they are still in the process of getting to some important advances. I think they have enough fissile material for 60 weapons. I can certainly believe that. But whether they've actually fashioned them into real warheads, that seems to me to be incorrect.
You've studied this region for a long time. What do you believe is next? Is there a preemptive strike that can be launched? Is more pressure on sanctions the way to go?
I think that, well, the answer to both questions is yes. I am afraid that there is a possibility of a preventative war, as as National Security Advisor McMaster talked about a couple days ago. But also, I think what we need to do right now is to impose sanctions, and not just on the North Koreans, but also the Chinese. And it's not so much sanctions, but it's enforcing U.S. law, because Chinese banks have been using the U.S. financial system to wash money for the North Koreans. And not just the small banks, but the big banks. We've known about this for a very long time, and no American administration has taken any action until June 29th of this year, when we severed a small fry Chinese institution. But we know that larger Chinese banks, such as the Bank of China, have been involved in money laundering. There's a 2016 UN report to that effect, and we haven't done anything. And when people write the history of this period, they're not going to talk about North Korea's provocations or whatever. They're going to talk about American inaction, because we had the tools to stop this and we didn't do it.
Gordon, we've seen, and you mentioned this off the top, that this sort of has been a sped-up moment for North Korea, that we knew that the technology existed, but it seems to be coming faster and faster if we believe the assessments. Is there any sense, any timeline of when this may all come together for them, in that sense that they'll get that nuclear weapon that can also be a re-entry vehicle and withstand the heat and vibration, sort of that one thing they have not done? Do we have any idea of that timeline?
About a week and a half ago, the Washington Post reported that the Defense Intelligence Agency thought that sometime in 2018, the North Koreans would be able to put a nuke on top of a missile that could hit the American homeland. That very well may be optimistic.
And how prepared do you think we are, Gordon, if that were to happen, in trying to counter something like that?
We're not prepared. We have the world's most sophisticated missile defense system, and it's probably inadequate. Earlier this year, the North Koreans test-fired 4 missiles in one go, and that was a warning to the United States that they could overwhelm our missile defense system, which is, as I said, rudimentary, but it is state-of-the-art. Nonetheless, the North Koreans have more missiles than we have interceptors.
You know, I think that's what surprises me the most when I speak to Pentagon officials about how they know the flaws in the system, that you can overwhelm the system by launching, an assortment of these missiles that can prevent them from retaliating and responding or intercepting. Why has that taken so long to get around?
Well, there were political decisions that were made, probably made too late in terms of putting money into missile defense. It was very controversial, for instance, when the Bush administration scrapped the ABM, Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, and also the Obama administration viewed this as a problem with a different solution. So that's the reason why missile defense was starved of funds. Right now, in hindsight, those probably were not good decisions, but on the other hand, there are other things that we can do to stop the North Koreans. And so therefore, I can understand the decisions that were made on missile defense, but if we had to do it all over again, I think that probably the American people would have demanded more resources to this effort.
Gordon, you say there are other things that we could do to stop the North Koreans, yet nothing seems to be working.
It's not a question of our lacking the elements of national power. We have always had them. What we have lacked, and this is absolutely critical, what we have lacked is political will, the will to use American power to protect the American people. So, for instance, right now there are a number of things we can do, like sanctioning the largest Chinese banks. We can actually stop North Korean missiles on the high seas as the North Koreans ship them to places like Iran. We don't do that. We don't impose any costs on China for permitting the North Koreans to ship missiles to Iran through Chinese airspace. All of these things, to me, are incomprehensible, but nonetheless, that's what's occurred over the last 2 administrations. So, it's just that there's a view, I guess, that North Korea was not a real threat and that it was more important to integrate China into the international system than it was to disarm North Korea. Those were not good decisions, but those were the ones that were basically universally accepted across the policy community in Washington.
A view that perhaps is shifting now. Gordon Chang, we certainly appreciate the insight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.